Welcome to Ohio Roots, the official podcast of the Ohio Genealogical Society. Join us as we embark on a captivating journey through Ohio's rich genealogy, history, and abundant resources. Hosted by me, OGS Executive Director Noel Poirier, this podcast brings you insightful conversations with a diverse array of guests, from OGS members, chapter leaders, and staff, to renowned genealogists, historians, and influential figures within the genealogical community. Each episode delves into fascinating topics and captivating stories. So grab your headphones, hit that play button, and join us on this enthralling journey of Ohio's roots. My guest on this episode of the Ohio Roots podcast is Bonnie Wade-Mucia. Bonnie is the owner of Keeper of the Past Genealogy, and she's the director of the General Society of Mayflower Descendants Silver Books Project, which is what we're going to talk about mostly today. I've always been fascinated by this project, and I'm sure that you have as well, wondering where your ancestor might fall into that. So I hope you enjoy this conversation that we had with Bonnie today. Well, Bonnie, thank you so much for joining me today on the Ohio Roots podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you about the Silver Books Project and to learn a little bit more about you and your own genealogical pursuits. So I appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you for inviting me to come on your podcast. I'm excited to talk about this.
Good. I'm going to start with a question I ask everybody because we all have our own origin stories. We're all kind of like comic book heroes. What was it that got you really interested in even pursuing genealogy in your family history?
I always liked hearing my grandparents talk about the people that came before them. I grew up in a household, multi-generational household, and my mother's family, they were French Canadians. Descendants of the mill workers that came down. And my grandmother would talk about her side of the family. So in Woonsocket, where I'm from, Woonsocket, Rhode Island, there is the American French Genealogy Society, which I joined when I was a teenager. And I still have my original card, and I'm still a member. So I got started that way. But then once I started looking more into my genealogy, my father, who was not French Canadian, was descended from, it's an early American story, the Mayflower Passenger, Battle of Bunker Hill, the Salem Witch Trials. Wow. And so that really fascinated me.
Okay. And that kind of makes sense then, kind of segueing into the Silver Books Project then. It's nice to talk to somebody from Woonsocket, Rhode Island. The Poiriers are a Rhode Island / Massachusetts family. So East Providence and then Fall River. So it's always nice to talk to folks who are familiar with the French Canadian diaspora, if we will.
Poiriers in Woonsocket. So.
I can, and I'm sure I'm related to every single one of them. Talk to me a little bit about the history of the Silver Books Project. What got that started, basically?
Yeah, it's an interesting project. The precursor to the Silver Books was actually started in 1899 with somebody who was in the Mayflower Society, and he just wanted to trace descendants down to Revolutionary times, to his own time. And that was the Mayflower. He started some Mayflower descendancy things. That was in 1899. And then over the years, in the 20s and 30s, people wanted to catalog descendants. But it was in 1959 that Louis Neff decided to do what was called the 5 Generations Project. And he wanted to catalog each descendant, each Mayflower passenger and their descendants down 5 generations. So at the time, it was called the 5 Generation Project. And they came to a resolution at the General Board of Assistants meeting in 1959. And the first Silver Book came out in 1975. And from that point, we have multiple books now. It's, of course, the first book took a while to research, and they were snail mailing things in, and they typed from scratch, actually, on typewriters, which is insane. But since then, we now currently have 41 books. Well, actually 44 now with the few new ones. And it keeps going. And we're still not down to revolutionary times even today. There are 26 families that you can be descended from on the Mayflower that have known descendants, and all have a Silver Book except for Moses Fletcher. He left descendants in Holland. So just to change that down the road sometime. But they all the families do have a Silver Book other than Moses Fletcher.
Okay. So it started basically with just those first 5 generations, correct?
Yes, it
Okay.
did.
And is it still restricted to that, or do the books pursue beyond that?
No, they started going beyond 5 generations, and
Okay.
that's when the original name of the project was the 5 Generations Project.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
books would say Mayflower families through 5 generations, but
Right.
then the project went beyond those 5 generations, and in 2013 they changed it to Mayflower Families Silver Book Project, and it was
Okay.
basically just the color of the book. And I'm not quite sure why they decided to put that color, but
Right.
that now has become synonymous with the project.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely notice them when you're in the library. We even when I'm at OGS and we have our collection there. I mean,
Very
they
smart.
definitely stand out. So it's good marketing if nothing else.
Yes.
Now, how far? I mean, I guess my question when I think about 5 generations, are we going? You're following a single descendant through 5 generations, or a single line? How? Because I know how things they all bring. I mean, is it everybody out of that 5 generations?
Yes, they
Okay.
best to try and find everybody. Of course, there's smaller families, like the Edward Wilson
Mm-hmm.
family is a bit smaller, and Samuel
Okay.
Fuller. But you have a family like the Howland family. They had 10
Mm-hmm.
children who had 10 children who had 10
Oh my
children.
God.
So when you get down to the 5th generation, you're talking
Yeah.
thousands of people.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a massive, massive project.
Okay.
They initially thought they were going to have like 4 books of everything. They
Mm-hmm.
had no clue what they were
Right.
for. Even today, we still don't have the 5 generations.
Right. Now I know when I think about when I've had folks on who do genealogy today using the methods that are available, particularly the digital assets that are available to them. And one of the things we always talk about is being very cautionary about what you're looking at on some of those digital assets, because they're basically databases, and databases, if they're garbage in, they're garbage out, and so you have to be very careful about what you use. What were the mechanisms that were in place during that initial project, that snail mailing, typewritering project, to try to make sure that the data that got into those books was solid?
So what they would do is they would have volunteers in those locations go
Mm-hmm.
look at courthouses and for
Okay.
vital records. Of course, when you're dealing with the first few generations, you're dealing with mostly colonial New England because they came into Plymouth
Right.
and they went out. So they were
Mm-hmm.
dealing with Massachusetts, and they were based in Plymouth as well. So
Okay.
they go to a lot of these courthouses, and um, they did use a lot of the early what they call mug books sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
um, they're not source genealogy, so you do have to be careful
Right.
with that.
Right.
They did the best they could at the time with the
Right.
information they had. And a lot of the early scholarship by like Robert Wakefield is pretty solid, but there
Mm-hmm.
are sources now that are online and easily accessible to
Right.
genealogists across the country that work on this project.
Sure. Sure. Has anything come up that has required the organization to go back and do a revision to a silver book?
We are constantly doing revisions to silver books to
Mm-hmm.
make the sources better. We're trying to focus on. I became the silver books director in January 2021,
Yeah.
and we really wanted to focus on original records because now
Mm-hmm.
readily available online. So instead of using
Right.
derivative, we want to go back and cite those original records. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a big focus on that. Of course, it's a slow going process because some of
Right.
these books desperately need to be updated. Some of them are still in
Mm-hmm.
typewriter font. So
Right.
we're doing the best we can given the
Right.
small budget that we have and the time
Right.
constraints.
Yeah. You mentioned the budget. Talk to me about where the resources come that enable you to do this project.
So the General Society of Mayflower Descendants funds this as best they can. It does come
Mm-hmm.
through donations as well. There are people who are interested in scholarship, so we do have some donors and things. But the
Right.
budget, in the grand scheme of thing, is relatively small. So it takes
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of time for a researcher to
Right.
do the books, and we do try and hire CGs and AGs and people
Okay.
who have that more of those advanced genealogical skills
Right.
in writing these books.
Yeah. As opposed to just shotgun blasting out to any volunteer out there who wants to throw a name into your book. Yeah.
It's a very unique person that needs to be working on these because not
Mm-hmm.
only are they have to have advanced skills, but they have to be able to write scholarship and
Right.
be That can be challenging for a hobbyist.
Right.
Things like that. I'm not saying that some hobbyists aren't great writers and great researchers and things like that, but to
Sure.
have those advanced skills is kind of a must, especially with dealing with a project like this.
The Ohio Roots podcast is brought to you by the Ohio Genealogical Society, the premier gateway for discovering your Ohio family history. To learn more about joining, visit www.ogs.org.
If you enjoy listening to the Ohio Roots podcast, we would really appreciate it if you could go to whatever platform it is that you listen and give us a good review. Reviews help us get more listeners and reach more people with Ohio Roots and what we're trying to do with the Ohio Genealogical Society. So please leave us a nice review, and thanks for listening. Just to give folks an example of what they'd expect, can you talk a little bit about your ancestor, your Mayflower descendant, and where they are in your books and how that would end up looking?
So I'm descended from multiple passengers.
Okay.
I don't even know the count because I was born about an hour from Plymouth. So
okay.
I have, I think 6 proven families, but I'm also descended through their children multiple times, like the Hopkins family, for example.
Okay.
I descended through both of the older children, Constance and Giles, multiple times. So through even the Howlands, and so my ancestors are, and I know we're on camera and people I have the little books behind me, and
right, I can see them there. Yeah.
So they're in a number of them. So I don't have a favorite necessarily because there's just so many. I don't even know how many are in there. There's a lot.
Right. What kind of information would somebody who goes through a silver book expect to see if they're looking for their ancestor?
So the reason why these books were created in the first place was to connect one generation to the other. So when people were applying to the Mayflower to the Mayflower Society, you didn't have to go right to the Mayflower passenger. All you would have to do is connect to a silver book,
right?
Name in a silver book, and then the rest would be proven. So, but these are more than just lineage books, because it's really, if you're doing any kind of colonial research, these have scholarships from all of those from 1620 on. So these families, I say that Mayflower families aren't a tree. They're more like creeping ivy. They kind of intertwine with all these other families. So there's a sketch. Each generation has a sketch with the parents, and it'll give you basic vital facts about them. But you might be using deeds. They might be using probate. And then they'll list their children and giving you sources to prove those children and those parents. So it's more of like an index of early colonial New England and even America, because a lot of these have gone out to, say, Ohio and out to the Midwest. So you're getting facts on these families that reach more than just Mayflower descendants. If you're, like I said, if you're doing any kind of colonial work, these are a valuable resource.
Right. So where is the project going now? Like what's the next phase for it? I mean, at some point, will you have documented everything?
Well, the families keep growing. So I don't think so. I think it can keep going as long as they can document. One of the biggest things that we just completed with the with the silver books, is each book had its individual index in the back. There was no one index. So say you wanted to go find a name in a book, you have to pull each and every book off the shelf to look. So me and my team, I had the great idea back in 2021. Wouldn't it be great if we could just have one index?
Right. Yes, of course.
I underestimated the amount of effort it would take to do that. However, we did that almost 2 years ago, and just a month ago, the Silver Book Index has come out. So it's 3 volumes, almost 2,000 pages, and it's got over 226,000 names.
Wow.
So if you have a name in colonial New England you want to look up, you can see that this book might be in 1 to 10 books. You don't know.
Right.
So now that really helps. That was a big step in the Silver Book project. But going forward, we hope to continually update these books with better sources and continue adding to the scholarship to the families, because we think it's a vital effort in the genealogy world to produce scholarship on these families.
Right. So that leads me to my next question, which is, if I'm looking for a silver book, if I want to use the resource, what are the repositories where I would expect to find a silver book?
A lot of genealogy libraries have a copy of the silver book. Of course, you can look on WorldCat and see where they are.
Sure.
They are not online right now, other than on American Ancestors. The 5th generation is online in their database. So NHGS has digitized that 5th generation because we figured that if somebody could connect to the Revolutionary War soldier, the 5th generation might be a good segue to get back even further.
Sure. Okay. I know, just to plug OGS, I know we have silver books at the library for folks to use. You said the index, you completed the index. Has that been made available out in the world now? Those libraries, those repositories can acquire the index?
Anybody can acquire the index now. It just came in a couple weeks right before Roots Tech. I was out in Roots Tech last week. And so people are ordering them. They're flying off the shelf. It's, like I said, it's great. So hopefully your library will be able to order one, because
I'm sure we will. If Linda, who's our librarian, is listening, she will have me ordering them tomorrow, probably. Luckily when we record these, this gives me a little bit of padding before I actually have to do it, though.
Now, I know that you have a Ohio Genealogy Conference coming up.
We do, yep, in April.
The Ohio Genealogy Society will be there. I believe they will have a copy of the silver books, and there's going to be a coupon code for people attending the Ohio Genealogy Conference. So just to keep
great. Well, we'll be sure to do that. I don't know that this will be released before then, but I will be there, obviously representing OGS. So I'll be happy to make sure people know about it while I'm there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about genealogy just in general. A lot of people come into genealogy, and more and more people are coming into it. And I think part of that is attributed to the amount of online material that's available that gets people interested or hooked. If you had someone coming in who was just getting started in genealogy, what's the best bit of advice you think you could give them?
Take a class. Sign up for some kind of advanced training or going towards that. The best thing you can do is learn how to cite your sources, because you don't want to just click on on like a leaf without any kind of sources. That's the worst possible thing you can do.
Right.
So, there are plenty of webinars out there, institutes. Boston University has a certificate program. That's kind of how I got started. There's all kinds of advanced classes. So if you're interested in genealogy, rather than just clicking along on those little leaves, take some more advanced classes. You'll learn how to cite your sources. You'll learn how to do a little bit more digging, and find some of those more those good quality sources, like probate records and deeds are fabulous to prove.
Right. Yeah. So using your experience, you've obviously been doing genealogy for a while. I would imagine if your French Canadian family is anything like my French Canadian family, you've had a number of brick walls to run into in researching that. Talk to me about a brick wall that you've been able to knock down in your own family.
So a more, I guess, not recent one. My grandmother didn't know. This isn't the French Canadian side. The French Canadian lines are pretty easy, other than my Acadian lines that, Canadian lines, or forget that. But French Canadian lines mostly go back to Fidois and Fidu Marens or all of that. But my grandmother did not know her biological father. On her birth certificate, there was a person, but it was fictitious. Through DNA, I've been able to prove the correct biological father. And what was interesting about that is my great grandmother put the real address of the real father on the birth certificate and used a completely fake name. Yeah. And I call him the scoundrel. He was.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So that was a big one to break down that brick wall. But then now the scoundrel's father is my second biggest brick wall.
Okay. Well, and I think, I don't know if you're anything like me when you're doing that, I find the brick walls to be fascinating. They kind of keep me going and keep me motivated. And I also find that when I hit a brick wall and I get frustrated and I walk off and I start working on a different line, or a different individual's family. And then my brain is working in the background without me even knowing it on how to solve that brick wall. And before I know it, I come back to it and I've figured out what I need to do. So I find brick walls fun, challenging, but also they keep my juices flowing when it comes to doing this stuff. Well, thank you, Bonnie, for talking to me today about the Silver Book projects. I really do appreciate it. I like them. I think they're a wonderful addition to the OGS library. I love the idea of being able to just pick up a book like that and hopefully find one of my ancestors that ties them to an incredibly important and significant moment in American history. So thank you again for being here, Bonnie. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed talking about the Silver Books and talking about genealogy, which is my very favorite subject to talk about.
Oh, good. Well, I appreciate it. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Well, that was a fascinating discussion of the Silver Books project. And I was amazed to learn just how much work is still ongoing, how much work is going to continue to go on in order for those of us who might have ancestors who came over on the Mayflower to document that and to be able to research them easily using things like the Silver Books project. So I want to thank Bonnie Wade-Mucia for joining us today on the Ohio Roots podcast. And I want to thank you for listening.
The Ohio Roots podcast is brought to you by the Ohio Genealogical Society, the premier gateway for discovering your Ohio family history. Hosted by OGS Executive Director Noel Poirier and edited by Luke Poirier. Theme song is Beautiful Ohio, recorded by Bob Stanley and his orchestra in 1944. To learn more about joining the Ohio Genealogical Society, visit www.ogs.org.